Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to viewers from all over the world. My name is Frank van den Driest of the Institute for Real Growth. And today I have the pleasure to announce as my guest Ramon Laguarta, Chairman and CEO of Pepsi Lipton. Hello, Ramon. Let me starting by asking you, where are you? And maybe you can describe in one word how you feel at this very moment.
Hello, Frank. Yes, yes, I'm the CEO of Pepsico. Pepsi Lipton is
Sorry, of Pepsico. Sorry, I was just watching the video.
Yeah, Pepsico. Yeah, good. No, listen, I'm hello everybody, and it's good to see you, Frank. Hopefully, it's a smiling day for you. After the victory of Holland yesterday. I know the games of the Orange is a big deal in Holland. No, I'm in Connecticut. That's where we live with Maria, with my wife, and we've been here for actually quite some time. I'm at home, and I feel quite optimistic. That's I guess how I would describe my mind state today, especially. I think that living in the US, I think we're a little bit in a bubble. I think the reality is that society is evolving very quickly to close to normality here in the US. But I've been traveling already a little bit in the last few weeks, months, and I see clearly light at the end of the tunnel in our associates, in our people everywhere. So I'm hopeful that we're moving into the next phase. And I'm really hopeful that also people have reflected over these 18 months or 16 months or whatever, and people are moving to better spaces and willing to make a difference. And hopefully we'll talk about that. But I would say optimism, hope. Those would be the way I feel.
Well, willingness to make a contribution is definitely something we will talk about. Ramon, we'll basically, we have a loose, let's say, a number of topics to cover today. We can loosely stick to that. One is about humanizing growth, obviously, as the name of this program. The second is transformation, the transformation you're in, and lessons learned to date. And the last topic is marketing, and very specifically your perspective and expectations of the marketing function and of marketing leaders, of which we have many listening and viewing in this show today and now. So is that okay for you?
That's perfect. Sounds like
great. So let's start talking about humanizing growth. Humanizing growth. If you hear these words, what comes to mind? What are your spontaneous associations?
Yeah, it's good. Good question. Listen, I think let me start with growth. Right, growth is essential to what we do as organizations. Our wealth creation is linked to growth, and there were some. You think about the consumer goods industry. There were some phases, maybe a few years ago, where there were some investors favoring, I would say, non-growth models, but cost reduction models. Clearly, I think everybody has realized that growth is the essence of what we do in business, and the only way to have a sustainable company that creates jobs, creates societal impact. So growth is essential. I like the way we're qualifying growth through the word humanizing, in the sense of, how you create growth can be done in multiple ways. How you distribute the wealth that gets created through growth can be done in many ways. I think the concept of humanizing, putting human beings at the center of the value that gets created, through growth and the role that companies play in society is a very good way of describing what I would consider is an important move in the way investors look at organizations, obviously our own associates, obviously leaders, boards look at the responsibility companies have in society. So I think it's been an important pivoting of the last, I would say 10 years maybe, but most importantly the last few years, both in pivoting to growth and in pivoting to a type of growth that makes an impact in societies for good, beyond what was probably the most conventional way of measuring company success, which was financial performance. I must say, financial performance continues to be a critical metric of any organization, especially public companies like we are, and some of the companies I've seen in the video that have participated here. So I'm not saying by any means that we are not responsible to generate outstanding financial performance, and that has to be a critical pillar of our accountabilities as leaders of organizations. However, we have to have I think a broader mission. How do we catalyze the energy of our associates, the power of our brands, the financial resources we have, how we invest our capital in transforming societies for the better. So, I think two very important pivots, and I think the role of organizations in the future, or in the present and the future, clearly, I'm optimistic that we'll have a much more powerful impact in the broader community.
Yeah. So you're mentioning actually in your answer a couple of stakeholders. You mentioned your shareholders. I think you first mentioned your employees. What are your, let's say, the stakeholder groups that come to mind most spontaneously?
Listen, if I think from my point of view, the most important one to me is clearly my own associates, and we are an organization that has a large human footprint. If you think about, we're almost 300,000 Pepsico associates around the world. 300,000, that's quite a lot. And then our ecosystem of associates, I would say, including our bottlers. So we have a business model in the beverage business that is through bottlers in many countries, not everywhere in the world. If you add those, our ecosystem is in the 600,000 to 700,000 people. That's not including distributors or farmers, so clearly we're a very human, large human footprint. So to me, making sure that our associates are developed, that they are given the opportunity to be themselves, they're given the opportunity to grow, that we upskill them, that we give them the chance to realize their full potential. To me, that personally is kind of my number one priority and how I see my biggest responsibility, right? Of course, I cannot deny that I respond to shareholders, right? No, I wish this were Laguarta Inc. Then it would be an easy life, easier. Yeah. I just had to deal with my wife and my sons, no? But I have a much more complex ownership structure, which means that I have to respond to them with good returns. Otherwise, everything else I dream for this company is not going to happen, right? So the right for me to, or me, and when I say me, I mean the leaders in the company, for us to do something beyond, and that's very personal to all of us, right? Our values are really linked to that broader societal impact. We only have the right to do that if we deliver very good financial returns. So clearly, that's a very important stakeholder that I respond to every often, and that we always keep in mind as we're making our business decisions. And then more and more, communities are very relevant in everything we do. We've always been a company that has been quite rooted in the communities. just by the type of product we develop and the supplier base that we have. So we're a big farming company. Even though PepsiCo, immediately we go to our beverage business. We're a big food company. We're actually our food business is bigger than our beverage business. So we're very rooted in agriculture. We have a lot of links to farmers, and with farming, we really go to the roots of society, right? The people that grow our food, the people that are in contact with nature, that are really the ones that are. I always love go and talk to farmers because I like the way they think, and they value nature, and they value the basics of life. And so to me, our community, especially the farming community, and obviously our suppliers and customers, which we have a lot around the world, are the other set of stakeholders. Those are the three. Obviously, governments are, we're meaningful enough in many markets, in many countries around the world. We are the largest consumer goods company, like in the US, for example, or in Russia, or South Africa. So big markets where we're very, very large, and the governments always pay attention to us, and we have a responsibility to improve the society along with those governments, ensure that the rule of law is well established, especially in some of the emerging developing markets. So we have other responsibilities along with just the financial or business development metrics that you would think of a company of our size being accountable for. So that's how I'm thinking about the different stakeholders, starting with and that's very personal of mine, my own associates, which I feel extreme responsibility for. Their families, their development, and their well-being.
Yeah. So you have 3 children, right?
Isn't it? Yeah, we have 3 boys.
3 boys. Isn't it with these stakeholders a little bit like with children, where you try to divide your attention evenly, but sometimes the loudest get the most attention, or you just think afterwards, oh, I maybe should have paid more attention to him in your case. Do you recognize that? Is that like a continuous balancing act that you're trying to?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, I don't know if it's the right analogy, how you love your sons and you love them all, and right, and you adjust. But I would say there's an analogy in how you adjust, right? You adjust your language, your thinking, and your how you can add value to each one of your sons, right? They're all different, and they all have different needs, and they, your empathy to them is different, right? Depending on how they, how stage of their life and problems they're facing, or opportunities or whatever. So you clearly adjust. I would say to the different stakeholders, you also have to adjust, right? You have to change your language. You have to try to understand what they're trying to do, and how you can serve their needs, and you are an aggregator of those different needs, right? In a hopefully an inclusive business strategy that can serve the needs of its different stakeholders. Right? And that's the complexity, really, of I think my job, and and all of the leaders that we have in the different business units. It's try to aggregate those different needs, sometimes conflictive, sometimes not really conflictive, but diverging a little bit, and try to aggregate them into a single business strategy that delivers as much as possible on the needs of all these stakeholders. You're never going to have them 100% happy, right? I mean, the tensions exist. The reality is that everybody is going to pull you in a different direction. You need to be able to stay, firm to your vision, pragmatic on your adjustment to the needs in every moment. And the journey is never going to be the straight line, right? I mean, like, anybody that thinks that a straight line is the closest way to destination is not true, because you'll never get there. So you have to have a very clear North Star, a compass that guides you with your values and where you think the company should go. Now, how do you adjust to those different stakeholders throughout the life of the company, the life of your tenure, your leadership time? That's, I think, the management art, the art of management that makes you at the end successful or less successful, and happier or less happy, I guess, at the end of your tenure. That's how I think about it. There's never a right or wrong. I think there is always, different ways to do the same, styles, priorities that might get you there, at the same time. But so that's how I think the complexity of our roles as leaders is to take what could be very conflicting needs and converge them into a business strategy that is accepted by everybody, and that everybody feels like, hey, these guys are doing 85% right. That to me is a good metric on how, of course, if you can get to everybody thinking 95% right, you're doing extremely well. But to have somebody thinking you're doing 0% right and another 100% right, that's probably not the right balance, and you're not going to get to your destination most likely.
It's interesting. We have done some research in the past 2 years as the Institute, and also in terms of the importance of different stakeholder groups. And you haven't mentioned consumers, but I mean, being Pepsico, you probably have consumers also very much at the heart of your focus, if you will. But what we've seen is that pre-COVID, the majority of the attention went to shareholders and consumers. And then COVID hit, and it shifted pretty dramatically to employers, your colleagues, and the communities as, let's say, prime focus stakeholder groups. Do you recognize that shift when the pandemic hit?
For sure. Listen, we had to run our businesses in very difficult circumstances during the pandemic. So probably it made us a bit more internally focused and ensuring the well-being of our people, and that they were engaged, protected, and that we were. I think we became a bit more human companies, and our leadership priorities had to change, and that's how I try to communicate to our people that we have to be much closer to our people from the human dimension during these times, right? So we needed to understand them not so much as business leaders, but as human beings, because they were all going through different personal circumstances, and that was critical. Obviously, the same for communities. We operate in communities that were really hit big time, and that we immediately reacted. I think we were fast in the way we reacted to help the communities. We're very distributed in our manufacturing and our warehousing and sales structures, and we are part of communities in many, many different cities around the world. And we try to always support those communities and be part of those communities. Our foundation, we increased a lot of our foundation money. We increased, obviously, employee donations and available funds to immediately provide food to like in the US, for example. You would be surprised, but a lot of children in less favored communities, their main meal was at school. Right. So one of the things we discovered early on is that those children, by the fact of being at home now versus going to school, they didn't have anything to eat. This is the US, right? We're not talking about, Uganda or something. But so we felt immediately that our role was to support those children. So through the foundation and our and we already have a lot of infrastructure for when there is, nature events in the US that happen quite regularly to support those communities. So we leveraged that infrastructure. We got to a lot of households, and we provided the main meal to children during the early phase the pandemic until society changed. So we were quite agile and quite focused in what was what we thought was the main responsibility we had to our communities and to our people. Obviously, consumers, Frank, have always been at the center. I didn't mention consumers earlier because that's kind of in a consumer goods company. They are obviously our number one. They vote with their wallets, yeah, whether we are going to be in existence or not. No, so they are not a stakeholder. They are the reason for our existence now in terms of satisfying their needs, and they have the right to make us a bankrupt or to make us a successful company. So, but I think we also became more consumer-centric, and you see there in the background the Pepsico way. It's a set of behaviors that we created for ourselves about 3 years ago. One of them is being more consumer-centric. I think as a company, sharpening our understanding of consumers in a more granular way, in a way that we can really understand the human side of consumers and obviously the functional needs of consumers. That is clear strategic capability that we want to develop even more. We started before pandemic, but during pandemic there were so many shifts in consumer decision making and loyalty to brands or actually occasion changes, right? The way they were consuming our products at least changed dramatically because of their new habits. We became closer to consumers, I think, and that's a skill or a capability that we're taking with us in post COVID, and I think is making us a better company, and our connection and our ability to connect with consumers, I think, is improving over time.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you really liked to engage and talk with farmers and learn from them, I guess. And I assume that the same is true for consumers. How do you, and I mean you, Ramon, personally, how do you listen to consumers?
It's an interesting question. We have a normal practice whenever we go to any market to go to consumer households, right? To spend time in the house with consumers. I find that quite enlightening to me. Obviously, I've lived in several, quite a few markets during my life, so I've developed already that I would say the ability or the skill to think that consumers are really different around the world, and that we need to learn the consumer in their culture and environment, so on. So visiting consumers, it is always a very helpful way to understand, really the realities of what they eat, what they drink, how they live, what they think, and what are their dreams, and what are their fears. Now, so clearly, this is something that we have as a practice in the company. I like to do it every time. That's probably my biggest insight beyond, obviously, everything that we receive in terms of additional consumer insights, documents. But to me, that's a practice. I try to also experience myself with a lot of the things that are happening around us in terms of new digital services, products. I consume obviously everything we make. I try to go to the supermarket, buy our products. Obviously now it's in the US. When I was in Europe, it's in Europe. When I was in Africa, it's in Africa. But you buy your own products, you buy competitor products, and you do your own sampling sessions with your family and your friends and so on. So I like to stay close to the reality of our products and our consumers. But you have to rely on the teams that are closer to the field. So in terms of how we want to be as a company, and that it is a challenge, I must say, in terms of how do you execute this vision. But we want to be a extremely locally empowered company that is very close to local consumers and that activates, from brand activation to innovation to the way we talk to consumers, obviously, to the way we sell our products in a very local way. And that's hard to do for, the 200 markets that we operate in. But what we think we're building the infrastructure, the capabilities, and the agility of our supply chain to be very local. Right. And that I think is an advantage for us long term if we can execute that. At the same time, we're trying to be as integrated as we can on the how we do things across the company. So we don't deleverage the company, and we leverage the scale of the company on the how we do things. On the what we do, we're trying to be as consumer centric and local as we can. And we have somehow an advantage versus other industries in the sense that our supply chain tends to be very local. So we are normally local for local in the ingredients we source, our manufacturing, and our go-to-market. So that allows us to be, even though we're a very large global company, to be a very local company at the same time in the way we operate, the culture of our organizations locally, and how we become closer to consumers. So that is one of the organizational constructs that we're trying to create, because I think the world is becoming more and more local, and this is driven by political reasons, but also I think consumers are going back to their cultures as a way to feel better, and they feel more empowered, and they feel better by going back to their roots. Is a kind of security that they're finding. So the challenge for us large companies is how we keep the edge versus local companies that obviously are much more flexible in a way. So how do we leverage the scale of our global scale at the same time becoming extremely competitive at the local level? And that is a complexity that I'm sure most of the leaders in the call are feeling very close to. But one of the big management challenges of this century, I would say.
Okay, so you took the reins at PepsiCo 3.5 years ago. What is the most important intervention, or a important intervention, that you did to actually deliver on that vision of, the what is local and the how is global? So, because that's the holy grail, right? Everybody wants that.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things we try to do here. The organization, our company has always been quite decentralized. We've never been a company that was decentralized. It was centralized in the way some other large consumer goods companies have been. So what we try to do is, in terms of, first, I was saying consumer understanding, make sure that we develop that capability locally. Second, in terms of leadership, we're pivoting more to a general management structure that is geography based, and that general manager is accountable for the end-to-end generation of value in that market. So we think that the next S-curve of growth and cost reduction will come from an end-to-end view of the company. And we felt that we had functionalized too much the organization, with the risk of not losing a lot of business opportunities or optimization opportunities by siloing the company too much. So we went into a more of a general manager organization type. That general manager obviously has some framework to operate and some boundaries that he needs to be operating within. There's a lot of things that we're making untouchable for a general manager in terms of what we think are the long-term say value creators and differentiators, especially the way we handle data, systems investments, culture, obviously compensation. There's some critical things that the general manager has to leverage the PepsiCo system, but we're empowering them much more at the local level. And I'm talking the 20 top markets. I'm not talking every market around the world. The top 20 markets, they are really empowered to run the business end to end, to take a bit more risk locally, to be more closer to the local consumer, innovate in the way that they can make a difference locally. Remember that we're in food. Food is very, very cultural, and understanding the kitchen logic of every country, understanding the consumer occasions in every country, really give you a lot of insights to how you develop good foods and good beverages to compete in a market.
Especially with these markets now more empowered, don't you miss it? Being so close to your consumers, and now you're obviously headquartered, right?
I do. And listen, I grew from the very bottom of the company, right? So I mean, my first job was, marketing manager. Actually, I joined the company as a marketing manager in Spain, but quickly I went to Greece as general manager, and I thought that was probably my best job. My best job was when I was in a small country like Greece, where I was really empowered to transform that business, and we had a great team, and I loved the culture and the empowerment I had. And because it was small enough, nobody really cared about Greece. So I had the time of my life, transforming that market. So I miss it. When you're far away from the first line, it is, you miss something, especially if you grew up in that system. That's why I before COVID, I spent a lot of time traveling because yes, you get a lot of reports and you get a lot of we have a great information system. I mean, so that's fine. You can run the company. You cannot feel the company from headquarters. So you need to stay close. You need to visit the factories. You need to talk to the employees in the factories, in the sales teams. You need to feel the temperature of the company, the passion for the mission, are we really connecting with our customers or not? You need to visit those customers. They need to give you feedback on what's going on with your companies. What are your service challenges? What are your opportunities? What's wrong with your quality? What's wrong with your employee motivation? All that is critical to run a global company that is competitive. So I'm very passionate about visiting the markets, and our general managers know that I will go and see them and spend quality time with them in the market, and I will give them a hard time, but at the same time I will support them a lot, and I will try to be as empathetic as possible with the challenges, and try to be a good coach to them, help them develop and run a great business. So I think that's the way you compensate for being away from the daily management of the business.
Yeah. So the last year and a half must have been
tough,
double challenging for you, being both not in a country and only working from home.
Well, listen, we've learned to compensate, and I think I'm sure a lot of the people on the call found that we had the technology available, obviously, but we didn't use it. So I never had, and it was my mistake, I never had, for example, a couple of forums that we have today in the company that are extremely valuable to me. So we created this top 200 senior managers in the company. And we were meeting maybe twice a year, physically in New York or somewhere else in the world. Now we have monthly calls, a couple of hours, we interact. It's extremely helpful for them to understand what's going on at the global level, to really become owners of the company, right? Leaders of the full company versus their individual markets or functions. And for us, for me and for my leadership team, to make sure they, they understand the priorities, they understand the decisions we're making, some of the capital allocations, some of the investment allocations we're making, and the why, and it's put the company closer more than ever before. So in a way, yes, you're missing some of the trips. In another way, you are having, some opportunities that were there for us, but really blame on us, we were not taking advantage of. At the same time, you can have a lot of meetings with people around the world, one-on-one, in a way that, again, the technology was there, we were not doing. I was not doing. So I'm meeting my general managers around the world, one-on-one, maybe once a quarter, right? Before I was meeting a few of them. Obviously, I cannot be on the road all the time, but that is giving me also the ability to connect with them more as one-to-one, where you see how they are, the energy level, are they going through some tough times or not? What are the key business challenges they're facing or personal challenges? And it gives you an opportunity to see the company, to connect with your top leaders in a one-to-one way, in a way that I don't think we're going to go back again. We're going to use this in the future, right? So you're going to have your trips and all that, but we will be able to put the company together in different ways. We're doing town halls of 30,000 people. We were not doing that before. And again, it's like we were not conscious of the technology and how it would allow us to really create a unique forums where you can be so transparent and where you can be so energizing to your full company. And I think it's making us a better company. It is, I think, and I maybe, everybody in the call is feeling the same, but I think it's a powerful new way of leading that is going to make us a better leaders, I think.
Yeah. Briefly back to what we talked about, engaging with farmers, with consumers and so on. Do you also use technology? I mean, when's the last time you engaged with a consumer, a household? And I understand you didn't go to the house.
Well, the last time I talked to a consumer was, I was in Mexico 10 days ago. So I was, I was able to go. I was there with our Mexico team in central Mexico in the Querétaro area. So I was able to go to households already. So we're back to real life here in the US. I've been traveling quite a lot. Last time I was with farmers was in Iowa about 4 weeks ago. I'm very interested in something that I don't know if the audience understand. I mean, I'm sure they do understand, but the importance of building a sustainable food system and what companies like ours are trying to do in terms of, especially a very powerful concept, which is the concept of regenerative agriculture. And obviously, there are other dimensions on how we create a sustainable food system, including packaging, including how do we eliminate waste for the system, and how we create more nutritious products. So there's multiple dimensions on how we need to build a holistic, better food system, and there's a lot of efforts, government efforts and large companies and NGOs, and we're working together to create a set of incentives and commitments for all of us to do better. There's one element that links to our to the farmers and connects with one of our key brands or several of our key brands that I think is worth talking about, which is this idea of regenerative agriculture. And the truth is that through the the search for volume and better output in the agriculture system, we have lost a lot of the diversity, and we have diversity in terms of the number of species that get grown. We've lost the quality of soil. We've degraded the quality of soil around the world through our farming practices, the use of fertilizers, the use of land in general, and there is a massive need, urgent need for us to go back to farming practices that are sustainable for the long term. We recuperate the quality of soil, the nutrients in the soil, and we will avoid the world becoming a desert eventually. So I think that is something we're extremely committed to, and that I'm very passionate for, and that's why I'm going to see these farmers to understand the challenges that they have to make it happen from the business perspective, their P&L, their where they need help, and I think that's a role that large companies like ours, we can put together. The governments, we can help the governments change subsidies and make changes. But for example, connecting to humanizing growth on the brands, Lay's, which is one of our, some of you might know, Lay's is one of the largest, food brands in the world. Obviously has a lot of connectivity with farming, through the potatoes. And we're trying to connect Lay's with the farming community in a different way to the brand growth strategy. So connecting the way the brand Lay's talks about the potatoes, the ingredients, the connection with the farmers that grow the potato, and how we celebrate those farmers that are creating these unique potatoes that we're transforming into food products around the world, and then helping elevate the need for sustainable farming and regenerative farming in a way that, if I do it, okay, I can impact a few people. If a brand like Lay's, which I don't know how many consumers a day, but maybe 500 million consumers a day across the world eat Lay's, that brand has the power to elevate the awareness and hopefully create commitments now, because awareness is one thing, commitment is a very different one towards these big changes that are necessary in society. So you were asking about humanizing growth and the role of brands. I think this is a great example how a brand like Lay's, global brand, broadly consumer around the world, can really have an impact on the farming communities and their livelihoods, and most importantly, the long-term viability. So this is how we're thinking about the role of our brands, and the how we link the role of our brands with the mission that we have as a company, and the risking the potential risk that our company has if the world suddenly cannot grow potatoes because climate change and the quality of soil is not good enough. So a quite integrated program, and is the way we're thinking about our, to your point earlier, how we drive growth. We want Lay's to be a preferred brand globally, but how that brand can drive growth and societal change through its obviously brand power and consumer engagement.
A while ago, I saw, probably you've seen it also, a documentary called My Biggest Little Farm, which is all about the importance of the quality of soil, and
it's a big deal, Frank. It's really when you go to talk to the farmers and you see some experiments on how we are degrading soil and how the water just filters and takes the land with it, versus a kept land with all the roots and all the nutrients, where the water just stays there and grows, versus degrading, is a massive change that we need to, as consumers, understand, because the biggest power we have as consumers is to vote with our wallets now, and to choose those brands, those companies that are making a difference. So that is where we're trying to do. The education level, both, and we have it in several, I have several examples, obviously, understanding the sustainable food system, we need to explain it much better, and we need to make the consumer understand what it is. But even things like recycling for our beverage brands, right? So if you think about Pepsi, in Europe, for example, we're 100% recycled. And we're really leading with that message now. Even though we're a challenger brand in many markets in Europe, we're leading with that message. Maybe the European consumer is more aware of the need to recycle, when you go, even here in the US, we will have to educate consumers. I mean, consumers are not, it's not top of mind, the high value of plastic and how as a society we need to recoup this, high value material to turn it into new products, and we cannot just throw it away. It's a huge waste for society from the economic value point of view, and then obviously it has some environmental consequences as well. But it's a real waste. You would never throw away your if this were your asset, you would never throw it away like we're throwing plastic into the environment. It has a lot of value for us as a society. So all these things are spaces where brands can play an amazing role of educating, obviously leading with examples, so trying to incorporate rPET into their bottles. We have this business that is thriving, which is SodaStream. SodaStream, I don't know if maybe you're in Holland. You're in Holland. You might know. Obviously,
I have one next door here. So
some of our colleagues in Europe, probably, or the audience in Europe may know the brand better. In the US, let's develop a bit more, in the two coasts, as always, the way things start here. But that is our commitment to change consumption models in the world that will lead us to better society long term, right? So if you think about, we're putting our best brands into that consumption model, where obviously, if you imagine from the CO2 reduction, from the plastic reduction, from actually consumer personalization, you can make your own combinations, right, at home. So that's the ultimate desire of any consumer, to have your perfect customized product. So you can do that at home, in a way that there's no transportation of liquids, there's no plastic. It's just an amazing business model, that consumption model that we're pushing hard, because there is.
You've pushed that, and I once read that when you already had a lot of affinity with SodaStream, and when you took the reins, that was one of your first, let's say,
I believe in you're asking about, I don't know if this is humanizing growth, but it's making growth sustainable. Obviously, there is a humanizing angle to this, in the sense that we are allowing consumers to make their preferred products at home. But if you think about humanizing in a much broader sense, the kind of society we want to live in, these consumption models will drive a very different society, right? I imagine that we can really convince consumers to make their drinks at home. We're thinking about the equivalent for snacks. What would be an equivalent where you can have we can help you create your own snacks at home, and that eliminates a lot of the movement of goods that we have around the world, or the packaging needs and all that. Those are fundamental leadership responsibilities that we have as companies.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about, because in your prioritization or choices, for example, acquiring SodaStream and so on, there's obviously the part that the rational, sometimes scientific community would say this is the best thing to do. Another reason to choose might be the public arena. Like, plastic is also a very big topic in the public arena, whereas maybe scientifically it has lesser impact than, I don't know, soil regeneration, etc. But then there's also, being the CEO, your personal things that you personally feel really strong for. Which is one, and I saw you, for example, in this conversation when you talked about engaging with farmers. I saw a light in your eyes, and the same when you talked about soil. So that's clearly very close to your heart. Are there other things or interventions, decisions that you pushed because you felt personally also really strongly about it?
Yeah, listen, at the end of the day, everything you do, right, Frank, you're going to do it because you believe in it. Now, if not, you're not being an authentic leader. You cannot run a company or do this kind of jobs where you are 24/7. I mean, like meaning, like I mean it, 24/7. Yeah. That's your life. You're basically working. You cannot do this and feel good at the end of the day or at the end of, when you take a pause and reflect. You cannot do this if you're not doing this from your inner values, right? Mm-hmm. Like you really need to be authentic here. So for me, areas of passion have always been, developing people. I mean, like I'm very passionate about human beings and how, we are creating better people through the means of the company, the opportunities we have for them to grow, to upskill them, to give them more responsibilities, and they can create wealth for their families. And just a small example, one of the most exciting things for me as a leader is when I go to our factories in developing markets and you talk to an operator in the line and say, hey, how long have you been with PepsiCo? 10 years, 15 years. And thank you very much because you helped my family, you helped my sons go to college, or you helped me put my kids through education. That is the most fulfilling thing that you can have. When people tell you, thanks to your company, I've been able to do this. That's very passionate. I mean, to me, this is like really meaningful impact in the world. Obviously, you have what you said about, the planet and the, building a better planet for our kids. You touch on the key points. Obviously, there is a farming. There is the land that we basically take food from. There is obviously the huge issue of gas emissions. I think we're all committed to that. We as a company made also the commitment to be net zero by 2040. Huge effort by the company. I think this has to come from inside. Otherwise, the financial trade-offs you have to make, if you don't believe in it, really you're not going to do it. In our case, in my case, there's also an important transformation about the perception and the reality of the products we sell, right? So, I don't think our consumers connect our brands with the products that we grow, right? So people don't connect Lay's with potatoes. People don't connect Doritos with corn, and I want our consumers to understand that. And also I want to give consumers the best tasting product with the best nutrition. So can we make Lay's with less sodium? We've been in this journey for many years. We continue, and we're going to take risks in that. Can we make Pepsi or Lipton or Starbucks, some of our big brands with less sugar? I'm sure we can. We're developing amazing non-sugar versions of our best products because the technology we've been working on for many years now allows the consumer to basically trade off between products, sugar, non-sugar, at zero taste sacrifice. I actually am a heavy, Pepsi Max in Europe or zero in the US consumer, and I see no sacrifice in taste. So that is also a personal commitment. Like, how do we make the best tasting products? Because our consumers really vote with their taste. Unfortunately, they are very smart. I mean, when we change the product, they get it right away. So taste is paradigm, but then how can we make within that taste, excellence, we can make better nutrition, so lower sodium or less sugar, like trying to give consumers their, the best products they will enjoy, with better nutrition. Of course, then we have other brands like Quaker, we have Gazpacho Valle in Spain. I mean, those are amazing brands that we just want consumers to maximize their exposure. But there are a few pillars that I'm really passionate to drive. Our associates development, the environment, the nutritional profile of everything we sell, that they're coming from within, and that if you think about the day I leave the company somewhere in the next decade, I love to go back and say I've made a difference, right? I've made a difference. This is not only a great performing company financially, but we've made a difference in our culture, in how our people feel, and obviously the profile of what we sell, including these new consumption models like SodaStream or some other things were quite innovative that we're thinking for our food businesses. So listen, that is the energy that you need internal to get up every morning and go for it and inspire your people. And in the moments of you have to be resilient and optimistic in this world, because if not, obviously the organization will take a hit if you're not optimistic and resilient. And so that's a responsibility we carry in our backs.
Yeah, thank you. So it's interesting. You started your career in marketing. I was going to ask you a lot of questions about your expectations for marketing, but by all the stories you said, it's very clear that you have a very clear expectation also in terms of just what you were talking about, product quality, improvement, lower sugar, etc., etc. Marketing will need to deliver that, and you will be on top of them, right?
Yeah, listen, marketing is at the end is the intelligence that drives the growth, right? And so that they need to be the architects of growth for the company, and being those architects of growth require understanding the end-to-end, understanding not only the consumer, but what else is behind the organization to drive that growth in a responsible way, in a way that is connected to the values of the leaders and the associates of the company and the company we want to be. So it is a very high responsibility role in the company.
It's a big and important task.
It's massive. Very clear. It's the most important, and without a good vision from the marketing team, not on the consumer vision only, but the full architecture of growth for the company, then there's a lot of movement, but no traction. We don't know where we're going.
That's definitely a very motivating message for the audience. We've reached the hour. I have one last question for you. That is, we ask everybody: is there any other person you feel we've spoken for an hour that you would feel would be a good guest for this Humanizing Growth series?
Yeah, listen. I was thinking about it. There is one good friend of mine, but also I think an amazing leader, and he leads probably one of the most complex companies that I can think of in terms of the human footprint and also the transformation they're going through, both technology-wise and everything we've talked about, environment and food, which is Doug McMillon. He's the chairman CEO of Walmart. Obviously a very powerful organization with a lot of power to change consumers, and that's why we're partnering with Doug so much. He thinks highly about sustainability, about the role Walmart has in building I think he's calling his company a regenerative company. He wants to create a regenerative company.
Well, his name is noted.
Let me, Frank, I'll try to reach out to Doug and see if he can make it. I'm sure he will make it.
That would be
he's
really
very committed to this journey. So
that would be super. Thank you, Ramon. That was a really inspiring hour, and you shared a lot of your agenda and what's happening behind the scenes. Super valuable for me and undoubtedly for all our viewers. Next week, I will be talking with Maarten Wetzelaar, who leads Shell Gas and New Energy business, basically the future of the company. And now we will start to stream the IRG Cafe with your colleague Marissa Solis and two of my IRG colleagues, in which people can interact with each other, ask questions, and discuss the pearls of wisdom that you shared with us. Ramon, a big thank you. Have a beautiful day. And
thank you, Frank, and thank you, everybody, and all the best to all of you, and stay passionate with your with your vision and your values. Yeah. Thank you.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ramon.